9. Although I have to say that I don't know if I'm so enamored with this Live at 9 thing. I didn't end up having dinner first, so now I'm getting hungry, and we just started. Anyway, whatever, we'll see how it goes. And YouTube just kicked in. Hello, 8:30 Live at 9. And also my options, and so your internet just sucks. I am looking to see if I can get into Mesh NYC. And for those of you who don't know what Mesh is a internet access point. It's basically free. You have to pay for the rigging, but then the idea is you put a radio on your roof. If you have roof access, you put a radio on your roof. Mesh NYC is a community of techie folks who have access to a direct broadband line. So the way that the internet works is there's a main line that comes in to various access points in New York, like the Google building in the West Village. And then from there, direct fiber cable. And then not fiber, they very powerful at the Verizon building. There's one, I believe, at the Google building in the West Village. And they just beam out radio signal. So to intercept the beam and then run that cable run an Ethernet cable from that radio on your roof into a wireless router, and you have like megabit connections, and it's free. You know, they do ask for a subscription, but it's like $20 a month or something. It's much cheaper than regular internet. It's much faster, and this is because all they have to do is pay for the direct tap into the fiber line. You know, underground cables. In any event, I'm trying to get that hooked up because I think it would be much, much better than what I'm currently doing. And YouTube, I don't even think YouTube's gonna work today. In and out. I don't know what's going on, but next big project. Let's see. There's already comments. Dorian Key, what's your opinion of the increase in violent black-on-black crime ever since the protests in every major city? First off, black-on-black crime isn't a real thing because there's no such thing as white-on-white crime or yellow-on-yellow crime. Black-on-black crime to ethnic groups because they tend to live together. So perhaps what you're asking me is better put as, what do I think is the cause, or what is my opinion of the jump in crime in the recent past post-protests? And that's not a bad question, because obviously folks want to know, why are shootings up 205% over last year? And, you know, I like to think that I'm pretty well versed in many, many things, but I'm very fortunate to have real experts in my immediate social circle who know about these things and think about these sorts of things. And it was one of the things that I wanted to talk about today. My friend Janos Martin, who's running for Manhattan District Attorney, put up a post today and talked about how he was in contact with folks and community leaders on the ground. Now, we discussed yesterday the fact that none of the purported cuts or what have you have taken effect at all. So the rise in crime is not correlated to any functional reduction in the capacity of the NYPD is as well what's happening. And this is something we've also spoken about many times. Early on in the live, when the pandemic first began, what's happening is you have storm. There is in the street, and there's a lot of, and so I've spoken to us before. We told about Freakonomics, posited that social created a high unemployment rate, which led to a bunch of people having nothing better to do than protest. And mind you, when you have a high unemployment rate, not only do people have nothing better to do than protest, but they are generally pretty upset about their lack of job prospects. This is actually one of the things that kicked off the revolution in Egypt and generally around the Middle East, because there was in bread prices, which led to mass discontent. Or it was fuel prices this time, I think, fuel. So in any event, I would say that my opinion on this is that having disinvested from communities for so long, program, great education systems, not preparing for a world of social distancing when we had the chance. Ultimately, these are factors which we should be addressing as a society, and we should have been addressing for the last decade, honestly, but we simply haven't. We've completely disinvested from the empowerment of our communities and the programs which create a pipeline from school and even for folks who aren't in school to employment or to keep them occupied, right? Futures. This is, it sounds simplistic, but actually that's only because I think we all recognize that this is a very, very, so if it sounds simplistic, it's only because we all recognize and understand that the cause and effect relationship between lack of employment, lack of prospects, lack of hope, and increases in violence. Michael Kaplan, I heard someone point out today that it was 2 weeks ago that the city publicly announced the disbanding of its undercover anti-gun units. That is true. It has been 2 weeks or so since that happened. Has that led to an increase in gun violence? I don't think so. I think it's very obviously correlated starting in the 90s due per se with increased policing. And even though New York City for folks guaranteed not to be the case because crime rates dropped all over the world in every major city in the 90s by a lot. And so New York is not unique in this, and not all cities pursued the same strategies as New York. In fact, this is one of the data points that leads to the conclusion in Freakonomics, and it is that economic factors present in society today. Every single one. High unemployment, emergency situations, of the failures of institutions in the face of the pandemic and in the face of Donald Trump's presidency and in the face of the economic collapse we're experiencing. So I don't think that you can really chalk up to the removal of 200 some officers from, an undercover position prior to the president. Do you support abolishing the Electoral College? Do you need 2/3 majority to pass it? To abolish the Electoral College, you need to pass a constitutional amendment. To pass a constitutional amendment, you need a supermajority, or is it a supermajority or just a majority? You need a majority of Congress to pass the amendment and send it to the states for ratification. And 2/3 of all of the states need to pass it. Yeah, 27 times. But 10 of those happened at the same time when the country was founded. So we've done it something like 17 times for real, in which the states, and like 4 of them were passed after the Civil War when the southern states couldn't participate because they were stripped of their rights during Reconstruction. So we've done it maybe 11 times for real, or 50 to change the Constitution. It's extremely unlikely that any state that benefits from the Electoral College would vote for its abolition, and then that deprives you of your 2/3 majority. With that being said, I would support abolishing the Electoral College, absolutely. It is not used properly, and therefore it is trash. It's anti-democratic. And in fact, that's one of the headlines of the day. The Supreme Court has decided that electoral to cast their ballots. Now, just to go over this briefly, as you're probably aware, we don't directly vote for the president. We vote for electors in the 14th, and they all vote for who they want to be president. Now, when you vote for president, you're basically saying, I want an elector who will select this person. Electors are theoretically able, let's say your state goes for Joe Biden. Electors are theoretically able to show up and be what's known as a, quote, faithless elector and just vote like. But there are laws against this in many, many states. Laws that say that if you are a faithless elector, you'll be fined $200 or $1,000. And what the Supreme Court upheld today was the idea that states can penalize faithless electors for not voting the way that they're supposed to vote based on how the state's population voted. Okay? Now, personally, I think this is terrible because the Electoral College, the way we do it right now, is absolute trash. It would be much better if we actually elected absolute failure because what? You're voting by majority rule in your state. The big problem here is that, there's a couple of problems here, but if you can penalize your electors, it means that we've sort of ratified the idea that the Electoral College is meant to be our substitute. Question as to whether or not, if states can penalize electors, whether the electors can still go and vote however they want, and the answer to certify those votes. And if the states refuse to certify a faithless elector, then you could end up in a situation where a candidate doesn't get 270 votes, the majority required to become president, because too many electors have been removed from the pool. And then this would kick a decision into the House of Representatives, which we spoke about last night, which is even less democratic because, very much like the way the Electoral College works right now, the congressional delegations vote state by state, and the majority vote of that state casts the entire state's vote for a single candidate. So it's incredibly unfairly weighted. It's very clearly not set up to be a popular democracy. And that's what the founders intended. But we have bastardized the idea of the Electoral College so much by trying to make it a popular democratic institution that I think is a step backwards, but whatever. Michael Kaplan, if YouTube isn't going to work anyway, could you play some background music? Play background music? Like while I talk? Huntsman just lost his primary in Utah. What was Huntsman running for? No idea. Didn't realize he was running, but I like John Huntsman. Well, that I believe. I mean, hate's on the upswing everywhere, and people just know these biker gangs, the Aryan Cowboys, apparently a biker gang, a Nazi, freaking terrible. Now, I also worry because we're going to have a vote by mail, whether some of these white supremacist and violent groups are going to commit federal crime by stealing people's ballots out of their mailbox, forcing them to go on election day, and then running their voter intimidation tactics. Dorian Key, what do you think of the ICE ruling today saying foreign students cannot stay if their semester is online? Yeah, that's bad. That's just bad business. For all this talk about being a businessman, Trump is absolutely terrible at business. I think it's clear with the way that the economy has been managed and the way that all our deals with China have fallen apart and basically everything else. But it's a terribly stupid idea. That being said, and we just had a Broadway star, so somebody who's not that old and is in prime physical health, die of coronavirus over the weekend. Dorian Key, when do you think Congress needs to pass another stimulus bill in time for everyone not to get cut off? Well, I mean, depends what you mean by cut off. The $600 pandemic unemployment insurance is expiring this month, and that really needs to be extended this month. Otherwise, people are going to see their incomes drop by $600. If you're talking about when the $1,200 stimulus check ran out, that done happened already. So I'd say Congress should get off its ass and pass something immediately. And actually, the Democratic House did a $3 trillion, $3 trillion? Yeah, I think a $3 trillion package. But the Republicans don't want to go anywhere near it. Now, what I will say is that our last stimulus, hygiene and cleaning at workplaces or remodelings, and I think, that was the disaster. At this point, it's a bit like people have effectively given up. You have folks partying island like it doesn't even matter. Joe Biden put forward a pretty decent plan, honestly, but he's not president. And I suppose it's never too late to start taking things seriously because the virus just keeps growing. Congress 5 months ago. Michael Kaplan, during the Great Recession, no trades jobs because the education system wasn't geared toward other jobs. Oh, unfilled trades jobs. Yes, I mean, we're terrible at this. I really do think that we need to stop privileging of a college education and just make it clear that higher education is necessary. Lifelong education really is necessary, but that the trades are also incredibly valuable. And there should just be free public college and free public funding of trade schools, and people should be allowed and encouraged to pursue what their passion is. And any time. It shouldn't be that you get one, eventually you want to go to university. That should be made free and available to you, and vice versa. Michael Kaplan, the greatest driver of decreased crime is prosperity, but all other things being equal, I believe that a perceived increase in opportunity to get away with crime could lead to an increase in the crime rate. Yeah, that's true, but, yeah, okay, so there's two things that drive crime goes up, crime goes down. So the riskier it is, and risk is affected by two things. That's really what I'm getting at. There's when you get caught. So if the value of what you lose, then it takes then the value of what you lose is very high, then the odds of committing a crime and the odd and on what you have. Whereas vice versa, if your prospects of the value of what you're going to lose is low, then the odds of being caught only has to go down a little bit, or it could just stay stable. So ultimately, I think there's a lot more to be said for the surrounding environment of the political economy and the lack of opportunity that makes people feel like they have pretty much nothing to lose, and less than like about a few hundred people being transferred from a plainclothes police department. How do you lost? Like Erdogan, should not be our go-to foreign policy. It passed that opponents claimed ratification by the other states. Actually, ratification by Congress. The approval that Congress gave it did expire, arguably, and they need to pass. ERA will immediately take effect. Who are your top three national level Republicans you like or dislike the least? John Huntsman, the devil. To look into it more. Michael Kaplan. There's still a lot of dead people who haven't received their stimulus that IRS council ruled they're entitled to. Well, they better get up and cash their checks. Get phase 5 and have gyms and theaters reopening in NYC by September. When do you think the Canadian border will reopen? Then Europe. Canada and Europe will reopen to Americans when America has the coronavirus under control. Phase 5 will come into effect when virus under control. America won't have coronavirus under control. Very, very smart political players like Erdogan and Putin directly without briefings, and is constantly being played by them because they're smart and they influence him. and they tell him what's going on before he can get the facts. And maybe that's why he doesn't trust American intelligence, because it's for America's own experts can. That being said, I don't know if Erdogan's as bad as Putin. He's not quite as hostile, but he's not good, and I certainly don't support him. Ben had binders full of Republicans that he didn't completely hate. Did I? I think Ben Sass, maybe. At least he's a Ben. Romney and Huntsman. I mean, I don't hate them. Oh, Colin Powell. I don't hate Colin Powell. I think that's all I can think of. Gyms, theaters, and travel cannot stay closed for a year. That's insane. I mean, we don't have this thing under control. It's just going to get worse. Oh, I mean, maybe nobody comes from another state, we might be okay. So for New York City, September seems early to me, but maybe by September. But it all depends on what the rest of the country does and whether they send us disease. But if they're not traveling, just work out at home, Dorian, like the rest of us. Corona mismanagement got Trump the travel ban he always wanted. Yes, and it's all on us. Michael Kaplan, just making fun of Romney's binders full of women moment from 12. Yeah, I know, I get it. I remember. In any event, I think, so to go all the way back to the beginning, one of the things that the city should be doing to deal with this crime rate is funding the Summer Youth Employment Program, because it gives young people something to do. It puts some cash in their hands and makes it a bit more lucrative to not steal than to steal. Anywho, that's pretty much it. That's all I wanted to cover. We kind of got through it through simple conversation. I've got this note about something. Oh, right. Dominion Energy canceled its pipeline for a long time. Not only that, Dominion Energy sold off its entire natural gas business to focus on use it like it can't make a business doing natural gas anymore. And the energy and the regulations are so. I still have a mitten from his 2008 campaign in the price baseline. Now they're having little blips you might expect as they try to baseline, and now we're surging back up. So it's a serious situation that we have to address immediately. Yeah, I'd say Fauci's probably right about that. That seems completely reasonable. Yeah. Oh, one more thing, which is end of shift overtime. Somebody posted the other day a public defender, and I had my public defender friends weigh in on this. Eliza Orleans also running for make up a rest at the very end of their shift so they can do paperwork. Work is and soon of millions of dollars. Really, really making bank. Imagine if you had, 1.5 hours of time and a half every night just doing busy work. They make bank on this. And we're talking, again, to the tune of millions of dollars for police departments and 100,000, hundreds of thousands in personal income. Well, I guess maybe thousands of dollars of personal income for any individual officer. Just making up arrests so that they can book the overtime. In any event, this is a very real thing and absolutely disgusting. So that's why we got to cut these overtime budgets, and that's one of the things that we have been seeing happily from our elected officials. Why doesn't Trump fire Fauci for making him look weak? That was the big question in the early days of the pandemic, and I think it's because people would freaking riot. Michael Kaplan, public defender sounds like a possible comic book superhero. It maybe, but it is in fact a real life superhero. These are the folks who defend the indigent, the people who can't afford attorneys, but because you're guaranteed legal representation by the Constitution, somebody has to do it. And so public defenders. Dorian Key, what do you think a Trump second term would look like, and would democracy still be left standing in 2024 when Ivanka would be devastating? Well, it really depends what happens with the Senate. Do the Democrats control the Senate and the House? If so, then the damage is mitigated. But Trump, the damage is mitigated. But we will still have international disaster after international disaster. And his capacity to control the execution of everything, like, will still be incapable of grappling with the Congress passing things and the leadership of the legislature to become increasingly executive in its functioning, which would be bad because it's a violation of separation of powers, but it might move us slightly closer to a parliamentary model of prime minister where the president is just a figurehead. Of course, we'll end up with a lot of battles in court. So I don't know. It would be a disaster. I don't think democracy will be left standing. Certainly not if the Republicans hold the Senate and the White House. New York State should hire Fauci. But why? He's not been fired. The fact that each public defender has major clients to be helping. It's a very huge imbalance of power between the DA, prosecuting arm of the government, for a while. Seriously, up the courts, the Magna Carta, citizens. I still for citizens. I was like, for the gentry, but this is actually about citizens. No free man shall be seized or imprisoned or stripped of his rights or possessions. Basically, a summarization of like the last